Hello YouTube. So with so much more information and content coming out about Tears of the Kingdom, I thought I'd go ahead and do a video on my opinion of things that I would like to see make their return, whether in this upcoming game or in future Zelda titles. And one of the things I'd like to talk about is enemies that I'd like to see return. So, go ahead and get right into it. So there's been definitely a lot of enemies throughout the Zelda games, and a lot of them have become quite iconic. And while Breath of the Wild had a few of them, it didn't quite have as many as what you would normally see in most Zelda games. So there are definitely some that I would love to see make their return, especially particular ones that were known for their place in the darker side of Hyrule. One such enemy would be the Re-Dead. Now, this is one that has definitely become an iconic enemy with the Zelda franchise, being seen in titles like Ocarina of Time, Wind Waker, and even its mummified counterpart, the Gibdo, in Majora's Mask. And to see what kind of rendition they could come up with in the next Zelda title, or even a future Zelda title, would be very, very interesting to see. And honestly, I think many of us can even remember our first time dealing with a Re-Dead. Because I certainly can remember mine being on Ocarina of Time after just purchasing it from my brother, who was selling it for a friend, and he hadn't erased any of the data. So when I was going through the ruins of Hyrule Castletown, seeing these Re-Deads, thinking they were people to talk to, I decided to go up next to one and find out they weren't so friendly. And that blood-curdling scream, that just really makes the Re-Dead that much more of an intimidating enemy. So I would definitely love to see the Re-Deads make their return, and maybe even the Gibdos. Another enemy I would like to see would probably be like the Floor Masters and Wall Masters, which anybody who remembers seeing them in Ocarina of Time or even Four Swords Adventures know that it was a basically, if you haven't seen them, just think about Thing from the Addams Family, except hyped up on major dose of mutated steroids. The Floor Masters, of course, you would usually find them in a room just on the floor to attack you, and attacking them would usually split them into 3 smaller versions. And then you'd have... Okay. And then, of course, you would have the Wall Masters, which actually came from the ceiling, which were typically pretty easy to defeat. Just let them come close enough to you as you see their shadow over you, and use Din's Fire. Otherwise, they will grab you and take you back to the start of the temple. Either way, it would be interesting to see how they could be utilized in a future Zelda game. And just the creep factor of not knowing where they would turn up and just kind of attack you. And I would kind of like to see them make a little bit more of a jump scare to where you really don't know they're coming. That would probably be a big step up for it. Another enemy that's probably a little lesser known, or maybe not as remembered, was the like-likes, which were basically giant worm-like creatures that literally ate you up and spit you out, typically taking away items such as your shield, which you would get back after killing it. Of course, killing it was not really all that difficult, but it would be interesting to see what kind of new version of the like they could come up with. Perhaps something that comes up a little bit more from the ground and traps you. But that's just kind of my opinion on that one. Okay, this next one was definite major nightmare fuel, I think, for anyone of any age. The Dead Hand. I'm sure many of us who played Ocarina of Time, who went into the well or even the Shadow Temple, would know very well of the Dead Hand. Whenever you went into a room and you seen these extremely long arms with claws sticking out of the ground, you knew you were in the room with a dead hand, especially when those claws came down and grabbed you to hold you in place as the thing came up from the ground, wiggling its way towards you, lowering its head to take a bite out of you. Now, for those of you who may not know what the dead hand looks like, the thumbnail will definitely tell you, and you can definitely look that thing up on Google. But I would love to see how much creepier they could make it with the updated 3D and crisper looking features. It would be interesting how much creepier they could make that thing. And it would be very interesting, and I would love to see its return. Another couple of them that's known to be iconic would be the Dark Nut and the Iron Knuckle, which you would normally meet with them in castles or certain temples, which a battle with them, they could take a big chunk of your health. But it was always a fun battle to have with either one of those. Now, I know with Breath of the Wild, they brought back the Lionel, which I guess was kind of like a replacement for that. And I know that Dark Nuts and Iron Knuckles had shown up in quite a few other titles. But it would be great to see the Ironclad Warriors make their return, especially because there was always a difference between them as well as any enemy. If you had ever fought them on Ocarina of Time, the Iron Knuckles were usually large knights with these axes that, once you were hit with them, would take a large chunk of your health. And in Twilight Princess, it was pretty much the same thing, but once you managed to hit them a few times and remove their armor, you would then have to go into a sword battle with it, as it sheds all of its heavier clothing and becomes a lot faster. So it would be those would be great enemies to see make their return. And of course, Wind Waker was another area that you had gotten to see, like the Dark Nut. So what kind of rendition they could come up with in future titles would really be great to see. And other than that, there are some bosses that I would love to see make a return, but I think I will do that for another video. But definitely let me know in the comments section below about which enemies you would love to see make their return. And if you agree with any of my pickings, just no Skullatas. I think we can do without them. I mean, they already brought up their creep factor with Twilight Princess, so I think we can leave them out. Just saying. But definitely be sure to like and subscribe. Let me know in the comments section what enemies you would love to see make their return. And then, so until next time, good night.